I'm so excited to have an opportunity to talk with you. This
Me
is
too,
Rachel
Perri.
Feldman. I'm Perri. Rachel is a director and a writer and an activist, and she makes films in Hollywood. And the latest film, which you are in the middle of, is a film about Lily Ledbetter.
It is.
Tell us why. Why Lily Ledbetter?
Well, you see why. I mean, Lily is an incredible woman who did an incredible thing. And when I saw her speak at the Democratic Convention in 2008, I was watching television probably like most of you were in my den. And as a person who works in Hollywood writing fictional dramatic stories, really not based on real characters. I have a big imagination. I write all kinds of crazy things, thrillers and psychological thrillers and musicals and, teen romance. And the furthest thing from my imagination really is real true stories. But there was something so compelling about that woman. I'm a little embarrassed to admit to you that at the time I didn't know who Lily was. But I heard her speak. Her physical presence, her accent, the way she spoke, the strength that she had, I was just drawn to her. I had sort of a physiological reaction. I grabbed my husband's shoulder and I said, I have to get this woman's story. And the very next day I was on the phone with her. And she said, I don't talk to people, you have to talk to my lawyer. And I said, okay, who's your lawyer? And her lawyer is John Goldfarb, who is in the movie, who was her attorney, her civil rights attorney from Birmingham, who took her all the way through all of these cases, who is her dearest friend, and now my dearest friend. And Lily's story parallels all of our stories. I like to say, I am a lily, you are a lily, we are lilies. And her story is not just about fair pay. Of course, that is the crux of it. That's why many of us are here. That's the policy that we're all working on, fair pay. But her personal story is so beautiful. This working class woman who grew up picking cotton as a child, she grew up in dire poverty, and all she wanted was for her family to be in the middle class. That was her goal. Just, can I please have a car? Can I please send my kids to college? Can I live in a decent house? That's all she wanted. And she worked her butt off every single day. She was the first one in the factory and the last one out of the factory, the only woman working on the floor, and they harassed her. They made her life miserable, and she stuck it out for 20 years because she wanted that paycheck. And then they cheated her.
Which is really incredible, and the experience of so many women. And Rachel and I were talking, she makes, as we in the documentary world call them, real movies with actors, and I work in the documentary world, but a good story is a good story.
That's right.
And the story of Lily Ledbetter is an extraordinary story. However, there's something more, and when we talk about representation, and particularly in media, in movies, bringing her story, Rachel, to the big screen is extraordinary. Talk to us about why that matters.
Oh, yes, it matters. When I first got the rights to Lily's story and I took it around, I immediately wrote a script. So I'm a writer and a director, so I didn't have to option the rights and then hire a writer. I was just going to write the script, which was a task because it's a 50-year story. There's a lot of facts and figures and laws and rules and regulations. But we wrote the script and immediately started to take it out to studios and networks and producers that I knew. And this is 10 years ago. And it's sort of incredible, but the answers that I got is, we don't want to make movies with female protagonists. We don't want to make movies that are political. We don't want anything that has any kind of progressive politics or politics really at all. And a working class woman is just not that interesting. So of course we have movies in the past like Norma Ray and Erin Brockovich and Hidden Figures and stories about women that we know become successful Academy Award-winning movies, and yet they sort of couldn't get past that. And so it's imperative that we as storytellers, representation matters, not only in front of the camera and behind the camera, but to tell a story about a poor Southern working class mother and grandmother whose goal was just to have a beautiful, simple life with her family, and then was willing, this is the thing that makes me want to make a movie about Lily Ledbetter, the themes of resilience. How many times this woman was told no, was beaten down, didn't get what she lost, and just kept going back. So the story of resilience is really the story that I think all of us need to hear, that the whole world needs to hear, men and women and boys and girls, and why I believe that this story will transcend what the small-minded studios and networks immediately go to and really be able to touch people on a larger level.
It's such a good point. And when I knew I was going to be talking to Rachel, I looked it up because I thought, anecdotally, I know that there are more movies about men than there are women. The numbers are incredible. 85% of films feature more men than women characters. Male characters outnumber females by almost 2 to 1, and 30% of films feature roles of female protagonists. The numbers are terrible. And so then you think to yourself, well, okay, so what? But there is a so what. It matters when we see strong women in powerful roles.
Absolutely.
Talk to us a little bit about that, Rachel.
Yeah, and not just strong women, women.
Right.
Girls.
Although I'm cognizant of the fact that so often some of the stories that we tell are about
wives and mothers and sisters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a good point.
Yes, but just to have the woman at the center of the story, I think is the point.
You're right.
Yeah, and so because Lily doesn't even know that she's at the center of her story. We do. I'm telling the story about this woman and putting a spotlight on her. In the beginning of her story, she doesn't think of herself. I mean, it's a story of transformation. It's a story of, of a woman who was willing to stand up to multiple monolithic patriarchies to say, all I want is justice. All I want is what's fair. So why is it important to have these characters? So that girls and women and men and boys see that stories about women are important.
No, there's no doubt about it. And I think for all of us, you can remember a film, something that you watched that inspired you and, encouraged you to go do something. And having women in those roles is so critical. And to think about a film about Lily Ledbetter as the center of a film is really extraordinary. So hats off to you, Rachel, for making that happen. It's not easy. And you spoke a little bit about the challenges that you had bringing the film. Is it still a challenge? Is it and what can all of us do to make a difference and demand of Hollywood that more roles be about women?
Well, thanks for asking. Power is in the box office. So if you see a film that's about a woman, please go see it. If you see a movie that's made by a woman, please go see it. Even if it's not your favorite, even if it's not, the best film, it's important that we spend our dollars on these things. Hollywood is a business like any other business that is trying to make change, that has all these, diversity and inclusion programs, but really only 3% of the feature films that you see in the theater are directed by women. 3%. It's changing a lot in television, and that's where I work. I work primarily in television as a television director. That is my bread and butter job. And to be able for me to make a feature film is an enormous, I'm a Lily, I really am. It's been incredibly difficult. When I go to the studios, I say, well, why should you direct a movie? I've been a professional director for 35 years. I've done everything. I've stepped up every ladder. I've had every job. I've proven myself over and over and over again. Why should I not be the director of a motion picture?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And I think let me just finish that sentence.
No, of course.
I think that there's a hierarchy in my industry that is the hierarchy in all of our industries. It's a class struggle. I'm just a journeywoman filmmaker. That's what I'm not famous. I don't have a big name. I'm not, I'm not a big name director. I'm just a worker director. And so it's a class system. So unless you are already a well-known writer-director, you're suspicious, you're somehow suspect. And that's the thing that really needs to change, that we all have stories to tell. And those of us who are trained as storytellers deserve the right to tell our story, whether we're famous or not. It's really a class struggle unto itself.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. You talk about making change, and it's something I certainly got into the business thinking I was going to make change. And do you think Rachel, that a film, for instance, when you think about Lily Ledbetter and that film coming out,
Yeah.
can it impact policy?
Oh, yeah. So being here for the last couple of days has really been incredible for me. I'm not a policy person. I don't work in government. I don't work in foundations. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a storyteller. And it's been so interesting to hear about all of the work that you do. One of the things that we did touch upon yesterday is telling stories and how telling stories impact people. Compassion is the best propaganda. If you go to a movie and you can put your feet in someone else's shoes and you can feel their feelings and cry for the journey that Lily is going through, because I'm not making a movie about the lady who made the Fair Pay Act. I'm making a movie about a mother and a grandmother who struggles with her children and the beautiful love story with her husband and what it costs on a personal level and the psychological cost of what it means to fight. So you're going to see a movie about a woman in her life who happens to do this thing. So I'm going off track because
That's okay.
Bring me back to what we were talking about.
That's my job. But you know what, Rachel, I'm just going to pivot a tiny bit because there's something that you said that made me think. We talk about the subject of a film, the people who star, what the protagonist is. But you, as a woman writer director,
Yeah.
you are, when you direct a film, you are in charge.
Yes.
How does that impact
Yeah.
the way the people you're hiring, the way that you're thinking about
Sure.
filming? It's got to have some impact,
Of course
right?
it does, and that's why it's very important that women, and we talk about the female gaze, sure, that's a real thing, but it's beyond that. As a director, even when I direct television, when I'm looking at the casting and it's a judge or it's a doctor or it's whatever, and they're all male headshots are being brought to me. Like, why isn't a woman playing this role? Could we please get this kind of person or that kind of person, or open up to all kinds of people? There were days when I would direct a scene. I remember I did a horror film in the beginning of my career, and there was a fight between a husband and wife, and he started calling her names, and he was going to hit her, and I said, oh, no names. He can't call her a name that rhymes with witch, and he cannot touch her. Let them have a big fight. Let them scream and yell. We all scream and yell. We don't call each other names, and we don't resort to violence. And I'm not going to have that in my movie, even if it's a shitty horror film. I'm just not going to let that happen.
How did that go for you?
You know what? The producers fought me, and we changed it, and that happened. I've also had situations where I have a 10-year-old girl who's going to play, the patient's child, come in, and she has lipstick on, and and a short skirt, and a blouse down to here. Like, no, please go change her costume. Take the lipstick off. She's a 10-year-old child. So, we do have some control about what people are going to say. But I do remember what I wanted to say.
Okay, great.
Which is that alongside of Lily, there's going to be a really powerful social impact campaign. And two of my collaborators are here today. Jyothi Sarda is here, and Kate Kelly is here. And Jyothi is one of our producers and also running our social impact campaign. And Kate Kelly is our wizard of partnerships. And we have some really remarkable partnerships involved with the film. Gina Davis, the Women's National Law Center, Nicole, and the campaign is going to be, so, when you walked out of Erin Brockovich years ago, we do this in documentaries, right?
We don't do it as well as we should do it, and I'm so with you on this. It's all about it.
But it is known to be more in the documentary world.
Absolutely.
You see a movie about toxic water, then you come out and you can learn about what do we do about toxic water. Where can I put my dollars, or where can I do some work? We're going to have the same thing with Lily. You're going to go see this movie. You're going to love this movie, and then you're going to think, oh my God, fair pay and women, and what do I do? And we're going to be right there with you with an educational campaign, spending, raising money to give to corporations and to other foundations who are doing the good work that all of you do. So it'll it'll have an impact in that way as well.
It's so important. The social impact campaigns that go along with these films have got to do a better job, because you walk out of these films and you are activated and switched on, and you want to change the world.
Angry.
Right? It's incredible. And then we're like, okay,
right.
What do I do now? And we've got to make sure, and I think that we do it to some extent in documentary, and we've got to even do a better job. Rachel, if you were the person who was sitting at the top of all of this, what are the impediments that we would need to remove in order to increase representation of women at large, and specifically where it's even worse when it comes to representation of women of color. It's even more difficult
Yes.
to get those stories. And that's why everybody, you know, that Hidden Figures was just an extraordinary
Yeah, no
movie.
one knew who these women now, and now auditoriums
weren't
and
stars and-
universities are being named after them. It's fantastic.
It really is. It's incredible. So what would be the impediments that you would remove? How can we change the system systemically?
Well, one of the things that I think can happen is that movie stars have a lot of power. Movie stars decide what movie they're going to be in. There's this thing called foreign sales, and it's sort of an evaluation of what an actor is worth. And when you're trying to get a movie made, that's why all the movies have the same handful of stars. Unfortunately, there are so many more male stars of value, very few women of value, and that's why you see these same couple, 5 or 10 women in everything. It's kind of the only way filmmakers can get their movies made, is to get those 5 or 10 female protagonists as your movie stars. So one thing I would say is that actors have a tremendous amount of power, and if the men and women who play characters in our movies were willing to say to their agents, bring me stuff that's not from well-known filmmakers. Bring me great stories from people you've never heard of. I just want to tell a great story. I want to play a really interesting role. If it wasn't all about celebrity, that would make an enormous difference in our industry.
Good luck. Sorry, we even deal with it in documentary land.
yeah.
But there's something else, another pet peeve while we're talking about them, ageism.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is that Lily Ledbetter is a 60-plus-year-old woman.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen very often. And I have to say that I find that it doesn't happen to men in the same way. It just doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So another interesting thing about Lily and about the parallel story of my making this movie and the filmmakers and producers who are making the film with us is that it is a movie about a woman in her 60s, being made by a woman in her 60s, financed 90%, very heavily by women in their 50s and 60s, produced by women in their 50s and 60s. And this is very unique and something that, you know, again, to make a movie about a working class woman, a woman who works in a factory, a Southern woman, and an older woman is another way where representation matters, where we're looking at heroines, heroes, whatever we want to call them, who are not young, that we are still vital in our lives, still able to make change in the world, and that we should be able to do that until we want all the way through.
No, it is so true. I love Robert De Niro. Don't get me wrong, but you know, he's making a film about being an intern, and there's just not a lot of women in front of the screen or on the screen who are of a certain age. It's just. It's just maddening. In the time that we have left, Rachel, let's circle back to Lily. What stage are you in right now? When can we expect to see it, and what can we all do to help?
So we will be shooting the film in Atlanta in October. Patricia Clarkson is playing Lily. Josh Lucas is playing Charles Ledbetter. So they're going to have a beautiful love story. Thomas Sadowski is playing John Goldfarb, the lawyer. And another really interesting thing that we have done with this film is the way that we have financed it. So like all of you and your companies and your foundations looking for dollars, when I went to the studios and I went to the networks and they said, you know, and Patricia Clarkson, you know, she's not Meryl Streep, and blah, 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 blah. We figured, you know, the only way we were going to get this movie made is to mom and pop it. And so we have done a very interesting thing, which feature films don't often do. Yes, it's an independent film. Yes, every dollar has been raised through individuals. But some of the money is equity investment, and some of the money is contributions through our fiscal sponsor. So this is it's a way that documentaries are sometimes
Yes,
made,
yes.
very, very rarely made with commercial feature films. So this is a unique model. It was really the only way that we could get Lily's story told. And, you know, the group of us were like, damned, we're making this movie. Lily deserves a movie. Every morning I wake up because of Lily, because I want her story told for the world, but I want the story told for her. You know, I did not grow up with a grandmother, like so many of you have talked about in the last couple of days, which is so touching to me. And I have that grandmotherly feeling for her. I want her to walk down a red carpet, you know, with Josh Lucas on her arm. And I'm going to raise every damn dollar it takes till she can do that.
And Lily Ledbetter, a fair pay activist.
Yes.
What do you hope, Rachel, that this film will do? We talked about the social impact campaign that you will have. What's the dream?
The dream is that people watch this roller coaster of emotion, you know, from euphoria to despair, this life that she's lived. She truly has a remarkable story. It's not just what you know. And that they walk out of the theater with tears in their eyes and love in their heart, whether they're Republicans or Democrats or progressives or this way or that way. It's not political. And to talk about fair pay in a way that's not political, where it's in your sense memory, it's in your DNA, it's in your nervous system that this wasn't right, this woman wasn't treated right, we have to do something about this. I think everyone will feel that. And no matter where they come from, we will be able to make change. So I think that, you know, movies are the best propaganda, and that's what I'm set to make.
I hope, Rachel, that your film will inspire and change attitudes and policy when it comes to equal pay. That would be an extraordinary gift from a movie that is an incredible story. What's next for you after Lily? What's your dream?
Well, before I get that, I just want to say one more thing, because we do have 3 minutes, is in exploring Lily's story and getting to, because I'm adapting a real story, right? I'm a fictional filmmaker, but I'm adapting a real story. So I have to honor the truth and also build upon the architecture of what we all know a first act and a second act and a third act require, right? So it's tricky. But one of the things that has been so magnificent for me is to get to know the real people that were in Lily's life. So Marcia Greenberger, for instance, was one of the 2 women who started the Women's National Law Center, and you're going to be speaking to the next one in a couple of minutes. She and I have become friends. Jocelyn Samuels, who's now on the EEOC, at the time worked for the National Law Center, who was the feminist who basically taught Lily how to be a lobbyist. I mean, Lily didn't have any of these skills. She didn't know how to walk the walk and talk the talk and talk to Congress people and walk in their offices and shake their hand. And she completely transformed from a factory worker to a lobbyist, you know, to a person that Obama named a law after, who danced with the president at his inaugural ball. So for me, getting to know Marcia and Jocelyn and John Goldfarb and all of these real people who work in policy, who do the real work, has been truly a gift for me personally. Next, I want to make movies. I want to tell great stories. I want to affect change through storytelling.
And we want you to continue to do that. And I know that I speak for every single person here when I say, good luck with the film, Lily. It is such an extraordinarily important story to each and every one of us. So thank you, Rachel. There's a lot of films that you could have made that are a lot easier to do than this one. That much, even as a documentary filmmaker, I know.
Thank you, Perri.
So
That's
my hat's
lovely.
off to you, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much. And to you.